Good morning, everyone. Jason Cannon with LFS here. We have a few people still getting in to register, to log in. So we're going to give it just a few seconds and we will kick off the call shortly. Okay. Thank you again, everyone, for joining today. This is Jason Cannon at LFS. Today we're going to be going over Field Underwriting 101. This is our second time through on this call. Anybody that has registered for this call, whether you're attending or maybe they were unable to attend, you will receive a recorded copy of this later today, so keep an eye on your email box for that. As with all of our calls here, these are 101 level. So I do encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like. We have the question box there. Please feel free to type in questions. The more the better, because chances are if you have that question, probably somebody else does too, and maybe somebody else is just a little too shy to ask it. So don't be shy, don't hesitate, shoot questions over. I'd love to answer as many as you've got. If they are questions that are maybe a little more in-depth or a little off-base, I'll acknowledge that you sent the question through, and maybe you and I can talk after the call, because I want to answer all the questions, but make sure that we stay on the 101 track as best as possible here. Also, as with all of our calls, we do have a handout. We have our field underwriting guide there. If you haven't ever seen this, I suggest clicking on that, opening it up, and maybe even saving a copy to your desktop. It's a very handy document. We're actually going to go over it a little bit here in the call. It'll definitely be your best friend if you're new to this business and new to the field underwriting process. So with that being started, let's jump in here. Field Underwriting 101. Are you asking the right questions to accurately quote your client? When getting started talking to your clients, you're going to need to collect what we call the big five. It's real simple. You're going to need to get a full name. Don't ever just go with female client or male client or anything like that. Get their full name, get a full date of birth. For those of you that are new to the industry, this is very important because carriers have two ways to determine how old your client is. They have current age, which is exactly how it sounds. However old your client is today, that's how old they're going to be at that carrier. But the other way that they date them, and probably the more common way, is called age nearest. What that means is 6 months prior to your client's birthday, they become a year older at that carrier. So if you're meeting with a client today and their birthday is in, say, September, well, if they're 30 years old right now, but if you're talking to them and maybe even quoting them at a carrier that does age nearest, they're already 31 at that carrier. So that's why you always want to take down a full date of birth. Whether you're doing field underwriting or maybe you even have a quote request that you'd like us to work up for you, that same thing applies there. Make sure you get a full date of birth because we want to make sure any quotes or any information we send to you is as accurate as possible. And if we have the wrong age, we're not going to be giving you the proper numbers. So make sure you get a full date of birth. You'll also want to collect your client's gender, their build, and their tobacco usage. In speaking of tobacco usage, it's very important in the way that you ask the question about tobacco to your client. You never want to ask, do you smoke or do you smoke cigarettes? What you want to ask is, do you now or have you ever used tobacco in any form? This is vital because there are actually quite a few carriers that if your client uses tobacco in a form other than cigarettes, you can actually get non-tobacco rates for that client. So don't ask, do they smoke? Don't ask, do they smoke cigarettes? Do you now or have you ever used tobacco in any form? And if they say yes, take down what forms those are. You know, maybe they chew or maybe they have the occasional cigar on the golf course kind of thing. You never know. Get exactly what type, how much they use it, how often they use it, and do they still use tobacco or did they stop using tobacco? If they stopped, how long ago, as accurately as possible, how long ago did they stop using tobacco? Because pretty much most carriers, if you have a client that is a former tobacco user, but they haven't used in the last 12 months, you can usually get non-tobacco rates for them. So it's important to find out when they did quit. Marijuana is also something that you need to ask about, and really in a lot of ways, it's essentially the same conversation that you have about tobacco. Do you now or have you used marijuana in any form? And if so, what form or forms? Is it recreational or medicinal? And how much and how often do they use it? These questions, along with really pretty much every question we're going to go through here today, aren't necessarily knockout questions if a client answers yes or no, depending on what the question is. It's just very important that they're just honest and upfront with you so that you can accurately assess them. So you can calm their fears if they're being a little hesitant or nervous. Just say, I'm not here to judge you, and depending on how you answer these questions, there's not, I can't guarantee that any of these is necessarily a knockout. I just need you to be as honest and accurate as possible with the information you're giving me. So take those things down, make sure you get dates if they no longer, just like with tobacco, if they no longer use marijuana, find out when they last used it. When it comes to build, clearly we're talking about height and weight. We need to collect the client's height and weight as accurately as possible. But also when it comes to weight loss, if your client has had any weight loss in the last 12 months, find out exactly how much they've had. Because what's important for you to know and important for you to explain to your client is if they've had any weight loss in the last 12 months, the carrier is actually going to add half of that weight loss back in. So if they say they lost 20 pounds last year, that's great news, but just let them know that they're going to actually add 10 pounds to whatever their current weight is at that carrier. So just be aware of that. With medications, this is a really big thing to try to be as detailed as possible in. We need to find out the names and the dosages of any and all medications your client takes. Ideally, if you're meeting with them in their home, have them have the meds right there on the table so you can write down exactly the correct spelling and the dosages, everything that you can possibly collect on medication, the more the better. We also need to find out when it was prescribed, how long have they been taking this, and why are they taking it? This is a very, very vital question to ask. Some medications have multiple uses, and depending on the reasoning for them taking that med could make a big difference in their final underwriting decision. So don't just stop at what are you taking and how much. Why exactly are you taking this medication? Also find out, what's the future for this med? Is this something they anticipate being on maybe for the rest of their life? Or is this a short-term deal? And if it is, how long do they anticipate being on this medication? Health history obviously is going to come into play. We need to find out any illnesses or diseases your client has ever been diagnosed with. Make sure that they try to, they go back in their mind as far as they can to find out or to tell you about any illnesses or diseases that they have had, when were they diagnosed, and what treatments or medications were suggested. That's very important to find out as well. Not just what they were diagnosed with, but what did your doctor tell you you need to do about this disease? And do they follow those instructions? We as human beings sometimes tend to think we know a little bit more than our doctors, and we don't think we need to follow it as thoroughly as they tell us. Make sure that they're following it, or at least have them tell you exactly how they're following along. And like with the medications, are they still being treated, or did they stop treatment? If they're still being treated, how long do they anticipate this to go on for? Is it for the rest of their life or a short term? And if they stopped any treatments, why did they stop the treatment? Was it because they're cured, or did they just stop taking these meds, for instance? Or, or do they just plan on doing this for the rest of their life? And lastly, what's the prognosis going forward here? What do their doctors say they can anticipate, going forward from there? Family history also comes into play, so make sure that you ask questions about your client's family. We're mainly talking about parents and siblings here. It's just like with the health history that you're asking about the individual client. It's really those same questions, but now it's on parents and siblings. Have they ever been diagnosed with anything that we need to be aware of? If so, what was the diagnosis? And when it comes to cancer, make sure you ask what type of cancer this is, both in their personal health history as well as their family health history. Don't just stop at cancer. Find out what kind of cancer it is. Find out what stage it was. Find out as much as you possibly can, because this is something that really obviously is going to make a big deal in their individual underwriting process. How old was their parent or sibling when they were diagnosed? And if they passed away, how old were they when they passed away if it was from that disease or illness? Driving record's going to come up here. Make sure your client knows that no matter how they answer these questions when you're talking to them, the carrier is going to run a motor vehicle report when this application is submitted. So it's just really vital that your client is very upfront and honest about their driving history. Anybody that has tickets or suspensions in their background, that's not something we're usually proud of and brag about, but it's just the reality. And so you just need to make sure, ask your client, have you had any tickets? If so, how many? What were the tickets for? If you were speeding, how far over the speed limit were you? Just get all those details that you possibly can, because they're very important. Again, you're not here to judge the client. You're just here to take down accurate information so that you can give them an accurate assessment when this is all said and done. Have they ever had their license suspended or revoked? Well, if so, why? Maybe they had DUI or reckless driving or something like that. They need to let you know exactly why that license was either suspended or revoked, and have they gotten their license back? If so, when did they get it back? If they don't have it back yet, when do they anticipate that happening? It's all about the who, what, when, where, why, and how. All those kind of questions here. So get details as much as possible there. Criminal and legal history. We need to definitely find out if your client has ever been charged with any felonies or misdemeanors. This is very vital and obviously can make a big difference in the underwriting process. If so, when did it happen? Did your client serve any jail or prison time? And did they have any probation or parole? If yes to those questions, again, when? When did they go to jail? When did they go to prison? Obviously, if you're talking to them, they're out of prison. So are they on probation or on parole right now? If so, when do they anticipate that ending? And if they're not on probation or parole anymore, when did that wrap up? Financial history also is something we need you to ask about. Does your client have any history of bankruptcy? If so, we need to find out what type of bankruptcy it was. They should know what chapter it was if they have filed bankruptcy, and also, has it been discharged? This is really vital. We need to know, are they still in bankruptcy or was it discharged? If they're still in, when do they anticipate that being done? Most people will have some sort of a plan in place, so they could probably give you a pretty good idea of when that bankruptcy should wrap up. And if they're not, when did they have it discharged? Also, have they had any tax liens or collections filed against them? And get as many details as possible if they answer yes to those questions. Here's our field underwriting form. This is the handout that we have. If you are new to field underwriting, and quite frankly, even if you're not new to field underwriting, I think this is a really important thing to keep with you, because it just helps keep you on track to ask the right questions. I've been in the industry about 20 years now, and I'll admit sometimes when I'm having a conversation with an agent or a client, you can tend to kind of go off on a little subject here where you kind of get off course and you maybe forget to come back to ask some of these other questions. So having this handy is really helpful. Like I say, it's as a handout right now that you can save. It's also on the LFS website. So if you go to the LFS website, if you go on the New Business tab, you'll be able to scroll down and you'll find a blue button that says Field Underwriting Fact Finder. And that's what this is. So if you need to find it in the future, that's exactly where it's located. And this is really just going to be really your best friend out there to just walk you through the questions you need to ask and some of those follow-ups that you might not automatically think of right now. So keep this handy. Make sure you have it at your fingertips so that you just collect the correct amount of data when you're talking to your clients. On top of that, on the LFS website, we have a very large list of medical questionnaires here. So if you have a client that answers yes to any of these health history issues and you have no idea what you should ask them going forward because you've never encountered that, again, under our New Business tab, you'll be able to go down and find this where we list all of our medical questionnaires. Go click on it, and this will walk you right through everything you need to ask. So it's right there at your fingertips. Fill these in as thoroughly as possible, and then after that, you can shoot them over to us, and we can take it from there. As an example, here's our diabetes questionnaire. Most of the questionnaires are going to kind of follow this format. So it's just going to walk you through what do I need to collect based off this certain medical condition my client says they have. Once you've collected these, you can submit these here to us at LFS, and we will shop these cases for you and your client. We'll find out not only their health history that you've sent over to us, but also, what plan types and face amounts are you looking for? And based off all of that information combined, our New Business team can then shop your client's information to multiple carriers, and it's done anonymously, so that we can get back tentative offers from these carriers. Nothing set in stone until a formal app goes in, but we'll at least be able to give you a pretty good idea of what to expect from each carrier. And the carriers are pretty detailed in their analysis, so when they send back their information, unless something comes totally out of left field, the final underwriting decision should stay reasonably close to what their tentative offer is. So don't hesitate. If you have clients that you're really not sure how to quote them or what underwriting class to give them, fill out these questionnaires, whether it's just the regular field underwriting questionnaire or one of these deep dive questionnaires like the diabetes one I have in front of you right now, and get that over to us. We have people with tons of experience here, so many of these things, they can actually walk you through it and give you an assessment, probably almost right off the top of their head. But if we need to, we can certainly shop these out for you, get back these tentative offers, and again, like I say, they're anonymous, so nothing is going on your client's permanent record, and we can then formulate a plan for you moving forward from there. So with that being said, we've come to the end of our actual presentation. I have had a question come through, so I'm going to jump on that right now. And this is an excellent question, actually. If the client is being vague about their health history, how do I get them to open up? This is a great question, and I'm sure you're going to encounter it. If you haven't, you're going to encounter it probably on a regular basis. Probably the easiest way to get your client to open up is talking about their medications, right? You're going to ask them about their meds, you're going to take those down, and you're going to ask, like we talked about, why do you take these medications? That's going to make them kind of, soften up and tell you that's exactly why they're taking this and lead you down the path to collect their health history. So just ask about meds, and they should kind of open up for you from there. And again, just make sure that when you're talking to your clients, just let them know, hey, I'm just here to collect, accurate information from you. And most people, in my experience, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, a lot of clients out there, they're fearful of the unknown when it comes to underwriting. The average client out there, they don't know how the underwriting process works, and what they know is probably what they've heard from a buddy or they've seen something on TV, and so that to them is how this process works, and many times it's not accurate. And so as long as you let them know, just be honest with me, be accurate with your information, and I'm just here to help formulate an accurate assessment for you. Just tell them to open up, and that's the best thing we can do. As far as going forward here, if you are new to LFS in general and you haven't had your onboarding call, please reach out to us. That's a chance for us to have a one-on-one phone call with you. Takes somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes sometimes. And what we'll do is we'll walk you through the LFS website. We'll show you where all of these tools and calculators and anything else that you need are located. We'll answer any questions you have about whatever it is. Do you want to talk about product? Do you want to talk about processes? Whatever it is you want to talk about and get answers to, that's where we'll handle that for you. And like I say, that's usually in a one-on-one situation. So you have our full undivided attention there. If you've already had your onboarding call, and maybe you're a little rusty, maybe you want a refresher, that's fine too. Reach out to us. We'll compare calendars with you, and we'll get something scheduled to walk you through just to make sure you feel as comfortable as possible going forward. As for our webinar series, our next one is going to be 2 weeks from today. We're going to jump into the fully underwritten process, so that tails right at the end of what we've talked about today. You've already been out in the field doing your field underwriting, and now you've collected an application and you're going to send it in to us. So what happens next? That's what we're going to cover on that call. So if you haven't registered yet, please do. We'd love to have as many people on these as possible, and we look forward to talking to you then. And again, like I said at the first of the call, anybody that has registered for this call, you will receive a recorded copy in your email later today, so keep an eye out for that. And with that, thank you so much for your time. We know it's very valuable, so we appreciate you spending some of it with us. If you have questions on anything we've covered today, I've got our contact information listed here. You can call in, or we've got Lori and Karen's email addresses listed. These two are experts in the field, and they can help answer anything that you can possibly come up with. It's amazing how much information they have. We are resources here for you to use, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us. With all that being said, thanks again for attending, and have a wonderful day, everybody.